from Facebook. Let's Periscope. Time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show again this evening. We have quite a set of interesting topics to deal with today, from the US and developments on the US scene regarding the elections to issues going on in Belarus. Loads of things to discuss today. But we start on a very somber note today, and this is due to the passing of someone who has been a hero to a lot of Black people. And Prof, you have some comments to make regarding the passing of Chadwick Boseman.
Good evening. Yes, even though he died some days ago, the impact of his death is just as shattering as the life he lived. There is this saying that it's not the length of your life, but how much you pack into no matter how little that length is. And before now, presumably as a political scientist, when I think of that saying, I used to think of Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, and presumably, thank God he's still alive, but maybe Barack Obama. But as I reviewed the life of Chadwick Boseman, it struck me that this is in fact not only a modern example, but perhaps a more, a more effective example, illustration of that saying. He, before, and we must keep this in mind, long before Black Lives Matter movement came on, the film Black Panther and Boseman, who not only played the role of Black Panther, but came to symbolize African civilization, had made an impact and a presence all over the world, apart from China, which actually I don't think China showed that film because they have problems dealing with a Black hero. But that's a separate issue. Black Panther then came to symbolize for the whole world a positive image of a Black civilization that could be embraced by Black people all over the world, both young and old. A little bit of a personal touch to my tribute to this man. I was dragged to go and see that film by my daughter. When I say I was dragged to go and see the film, I really didn't have that much of an impression of the film. It wasn't the film I was protesting about. It was not that. I preferred to stay home and watch whatever was going on the television set. So I usually waited for films to be declassified and put on television. But my daughter insisted that we were going to go to the theater and we were going to see this film. And she kept, raving on about this film that finally I decided that for peace of mind, I'll go with her. So we went. And I must say, I was fascinated by the film. And I came out of the theater cheering, clapping. All of us who were in the theater came out with the Wakanga salute. And I was very much in favor. But by the following day, I had a change of mind for two reasons. For two reasons. I didn't like the fact that the CIA guy was put in a positive role because there has been nothing positive about the CIA in Africa. They had fomented coups. They are still fomenting civil wars for the sake of American companies having access to mineral exploitation in Africa. So I didn't like the way the CIA guy was portrayed in a positive role. The second reason why I had a change of mind about the film was the message, the core message of the film. Yes, Africa had this special mineral, this God-given mineral that only Africa had. And the conflict within Wakanga was, what do you do with this mineral? Do you share it with the rest of the world? Or does Africa keep that mineral to itself and use it to advance African interests? That was the core conflict in the film. And at the end, Bossman, who played the role of the Black Panther and who wanted the mineral to be shared with the rest of the world, won. And that was the central message in the film, that Africa will share this unique mineral with the world. I would have preferred the film ending on a tone of, we will keep this mineral to Africa. We will not use it to oppress the rest of the world, but we will use it to develop Africa to the stage where Africa will not be exploited. That's what I would have preferred. But nevertheless, I wasn't a consultant to the filmmakers. That was their own message, that Africa will share it with the rest of the world. But
So,
the message, however, the impact is not lost on me, that the rest of the world, that the entire world embraced this film, and Bossman became an epitome of positive African civilization. So, Mr. Moderator, I will say Wakanga forever.
forever. Yes,
Katonga forever.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
We are going to miss him. He packed so much into a short life. If I may extend it for one more second, I want to pay the ultimate tribute to Bossman by saying I have finally resolved it in my mind that we are Africans. We will be called Africans. We are not going to have all this debate about what should we call ourselves. We are Africans. I am prepared to share that appellation with Arabs in North Africa if they want, to be called Arab Africans, fine. They are hyphenated Africans. I'm prepared to share that appellation with the whites in South Africa if they want to be called white Africans. But we are Africans. Africa forever.
Wow. Prof, there is a question I want to put to you here. A lot of people have talked about this movie. They've talked about the acting, the excellence with which it was produced, the excellence with which it portrayed Africa. But one area that has shocked a lot of people is the fact that Chadwick was going through his personal health challenge. What do you think that experience would have been like for him, keeping such, going through such painful process, chemotherapy, and all the treatment they say he went through, yet standing up to act that movie the way he did?
It adds to his hero profile, it adds to his human profile. There's a third thing you didn't add there, and that was that he never let it be known publicly that he had this health issue. He never exploited it to build up his acting hero. I even understand, since I've been reading a little bit about it since he died, that even on his Twitter account, or is it Facebook or Twitter account, I don't know which one, some of the commentators were asking him, are you on drugs? Are you gay? Or why are you so thin? Why are you shrinking? And he never got provoked into saying no, it's because I'm going through this. Because he wanted people to concentrate on his talent. He didn't want to be pitied or for anyone to think, oh, he got that role because they pitied him. Believe me, he was a man.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's move on to another story in the US, and look at some of the news coming out regarding the elections in the run up to the elections, and the fact that we're hearing reports of one, Russia may be trying to interfere in this election again. And number two, that the Homeland Security Department got that information and chose to suppress it. How do you respond to this information, Prof?
Well, um, 2 weeks ago or so, when we were discussing the riots and lootings that took place during the night demonstration, remember, I was raising an issue that, are you sure that these night looters were not being sponsored by forces that were inimical to Biden's chances and by forces that sought to damage African American interests? Now, when I heard that, in fact, there is now evidence that the Russians have now started this whatever troll activities that UIT people call it, in order to damage Biden, and that was suppressed by the administration, and that it was only the FBI who released this information to the media, then I am convinced that those demonstrators those looters, those murderers are being sponsored by the Russians. And this is damaging to not only American interests, this is damaging to democratic interests all over the world. The only thing that upsets me more is that all of them, the Americans, the Russians, well, I don't know about the Chinese, but the Europeans, especially when it comes to Africa, interfere in the electoral processes in Africa as well. So, in a way, democracy is in danger, and it's in danger not just because of the Russians, but it's in danger from the nefarious activities of, of the superpowers, of the global powers.
One of the points, Prof, regarding this kind of interference, but shouldn't the even the Democratic Party have taken steps, knowing what happened during the last elections and the allegations at the time? Shouldn't they have taken more steps to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again and could maybe cost them the elections?
Well, that has crossed my mind. And then you ask yourself, what steps can they take? Technology is so far advanced that even the CIA or the FBI, even though they can detect, they are not in a position to put a stop to it, perhaps without becoming too involved in the electoral process and thereby running the risk of being accused of being partisan. Because I'm sure that if there was a way in which the Democratic Party could take steps to block off Russian or foreign negative interference, they would do so. Today, yes, today the owner of Facebook has now announced that a week before the election, they will not carry any advert, any partisan advert, whether Republican or Democratic or from any civil society organization. They will not carry any such advert. Also, they have been putting out all these signs about this is fake news, this is not true. I mean, we've checked this and don't believe this. That Facebook has been doing that. Well, because they are the medium, so they can do that. But I'm afraid that we're all going to be prisoners to technology in a negative sense. Technology has its own positive sense, and the social media has positive advantages, positive attributes, but it also has negative attributes that we haven't found a way to effectively deal with.
Do you see, apart from this interference, we're starting to see a lot more Republicans endorse Joe Biden and top Republicans endorsing Joe Biden. Despite that, do you see him having done enough to win this election?
Well, um, first of all, yes, one will be gladdened by the open endorsement by top Republicans. But please don't forget that in the 2016 election, in fact, I cannot think of one top Republican who supported Donald Trump. They might not have come out openly to endorse Hillary Clinton, but they didn't. Uh, um, in fact, they came out to say they will not endorse Trump. So is that, see, it is the core base of Donald Trump that will not leave him for any reason. Recall what he said, that he could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody openly, and yet his core supporters will not leave him. And he proved to be right. So, to that extent, I don't know what Biden can do except let him stay focused on his message. And the press has a role to play in this. The press should not play into Trump's hand by continuing to emphasize riots, violence, death, this. That's what Trump wants, because he wants to put himself forward as, the sheriff who rides into town and single-handedly puts down riots, put down violence, is responsible for the safety, of the nation. He doesn't want you to talk about COVID-19, his incompetence in dealing with COVID-19, the fact that the economy has practically collapsed, that due to Republican intransigence, they have not been able to come up with the third package of palliatives, and that has increased poverty in the United States. He doesn't want you to talk about all that, and the press should not play into his hands by now continuing to relay his message about violence. If Biden will stay on message, talk about his compassion, talk about his empathy, talk about how he will handle COVID-19. He will depend upon science. Let scientists drive what is needed to cope with COVID-19. Then I think that he will have done all he possibly could. And I think, although we are still 2 months or so from the election, I think the fact that he's kept his solid support in the polls, including in states that are contentious, that he needs to win. He had the latest polls that came out today show him leading in in 4 of the 5 states, and I think that bodes well.
One of the points that people are raising is this issue of the popular vote versus the electoral vote, and the fact that Biden could still find himself where Hillary Clinton was during the last election. What do you think a loss for Biden would mean to the American people?
It will be tragic, not just for the American people, but for the rest of the world. It will be tragic. Um, for the Americans, it means having in the White House, on top of government, someone whose attributes are a negation of what, at least when I was growing up, one was led to believe that this was what the United States was all about. Yes, I mean, there is always an exaggeration in those things. There is always an unacceptable underbelly in every country. But by and large, the United States, made up for that unacceptable underbelly by policies that were of an advantage to it and an advantage, to the rest of the world in terms of globalization, in terms of being part of tackling climate change, reversing some of the damage that we have done to the planet, being part of, efforts to lessen um, um, efforts to lessen conflicts in the world through treaty making rather than unilaterally, and all those kind of things. It will be tragic, but it's not unless we have a world war. It's not going to mean the end of the world. Uh, the United States has gone through periods when it has had very unacceptable figures influencing policy. Although I must say, in my lifetime, and I'm in my late 70s, I cannot remember any time when the occupant of the White House uh, has been such a negative, disruptive figure as Donald Trump. I can't remember. But, you know, uh, the system will not only resist him for the 4 years, but the system will rebuild the United States. And there are forces in the rest of the world who, or which, if they hold firm, can lessen the impact of a second term of Trump on us. But remember my if he doesn't lead us into another world war. I don't think he would deliberately, but from what we've read in all the books written about him, in all the things said about people who have worked for him, he cannot concentrate. You can't get him on focus as regards uh, what are the strategic issues that are at play in any conflict. Nobody understands his relationship with Putin. Why does he allow Putin to get away with murder? Nobody understands. So that big if is there. But we have to be optimistic that we will survive it.
Hmm. All right, let's move away from the US and go to Europe. We have this issue that has been going on in Belarus. Um, what is your view on the situation there?
Well, Belarus is an example of what happens when an election gets stolen. In fact, the appellation for the president of Belarus is that he's the last dictator in Europe. He's a survivor from the apparatic of the Soviet era. Others have managed some transition into some form of democracy, some form of civilian rule, but not in Belarus. He's been there now for 28 or so odd years. And you ask yourself, if he hasn't achieved all the things he would like to achieve in 28 years, what more can he achieve by again uh, um, um, ruining a beautiful country like that through a stolen election. One has been, each time I wake up and, I turn on the news, it's like I hold my breath and say, I hope the Russians have not moved in troops. And when you then see the demonstrations on the street 2 weeks or so after the election, then you know that the the only way to suppress determined human will, positive human will, is if you use deadly force. Day in, day out, men, women, some women carrying their children have been out on the streets of Belarus, and I salute their courage. That must be very encouraging to other countries in the world where elections are still stolen and people feel despondent as to what could they possibly do to tackle an issue like this. One would say, look at Belarus, and but as I said, I pray that Russia will not send in troops.
A question has been raised here, which says that some have called for Belarus to break ties with Russia. We know Russia has given quite a lot of concessions to that country, but that Belarus should break ties with Russia and align with the West. Would you support such a view?
No, I wouldn't. Number one, and it's very important to note this, that the demonstrators on the street, that is not one of their demands. They have not asked for a break in the relationship with Russia. They have not asked for a shift to the Western alliance for a very simple reason, that not only does Belarus share a common frontier with Russia, but Belarus is the most western boundary of what I would call the Russian influence. There are Russian bases there. There are Russian, military, what I will call. Belarus represents the external Western strategic position of Russian defense in its relationship with NATO. So Russia cannot afford for Belarus to change overnight, and it will be ill-advised and dangerous for anyone at this time to seek to push Belarus towards the Western alliance. Russia will not allow Belarus to get away with that.
Do you think Russia will align with the people of Belarus or with the government of Belarus?
It is difficult right now. One can only play scenarios. Right now, Russia is with the government openly, but I will not be surprised if, given the fact that the people are not asking for a change in a strategic alliance away from Russia towards NATO, they may be advising this man, the president of Belarus, to find ways of maybe reaching some deal with the people on the street. But if it looks like it is going to cost Russia a lot to sustain him in power, they may gracefully ease him out and accept a figure from the opposition. As I said, given the fact that the opposition is not asking for a change in strategic alliance. So, there are a few ifs there. And of course, in diplomacy, you don't know what is being said behind the chair. You don't know what is being said, privately, and what kind of scenarios both Russia and Belarus are playing. You don't even know. It's also even possible that there may be secret communication between Russia and NATO as regards how to extricate both Russia and NATO from a confrontation in that area.
Prof, there's a question here on YouTube, and since you mentioned diplomacy there, and this question is looking at really the notion of national leaders in some countries going to other nations under the umbrella of diplomacy without necessarily going with people from say their Department of State or their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Is it, do they have to do that?
A president can use several means of communicating with friendly countries, or even countries that are not so friendly, depending on a lot of factors. Countries have been known to use, for example, retired ex-presidents. They've been known to use security forces or security officers, high-level military officers, especially if the high-level military officers have friends across the border. It depends on what the president is comfortable with and what he hopes to achieve. It's not always, all the time, that you send your foreign minister. There may be reasons why you don't want to use your foreign minister. I know what this question is all about, but it's up to the president. But if you start talking about parliamentary diplomacy, then I've dealt with funnier scenarios in my time in office, but it's unusual. No, not that it is unusual. It's probably a slap in the face of those who have the constitutional responsibility of dealing with foreign countries.
Hmm. All right. Now there is another issue that's a key issue in the press today, and it's the issue going on between China and India over the border. What are your thoughts on that?
You will recall, and I think on several of our programs, I've been warning about issues getting out of hands and leading to unpredictable consequences. I, for the life of me, don't understand why during this period when the United States is on the verge of elections, where there may be a temptation for Donald Trump to be looking for an opportunity to exert his leadership role in the world by using American forces, why there would then be a blow up on the Chinese-Indian border. The first question I would ask myself is, who started this? Is it the Chinese or is it the Indians? If it is the Chinese, it wouldn't make any sense to me, because you will be giving Trump an opportunity to play an anti-Chinese card at this time when the polls show is in a weak position. If it is India, first question I would ask myself is, why will India start on the border some confrontation with a country that is about 3 times the size of China? Why? Unless India also wants to provoke China and thereby provide an opportunity for Trump to come down hard on China in order to protect India. So, whatever may be the reason behind this, and whoever may be behind this, it is an unwelcome provocation that has the tendency of leading to uncontrolled and unforeseen circumstances.
We've had and I'll quote here the Chinese foreign spokesperson saying that India has severely undermined Chinese territorial sovereignty in that area. Now, this issue has been going on in 1962 or so. There was a conflict between those two nations there. As you have said, if this were to escalate, particularly during the run up to an election, we don't see the United States participating in anything there, given the local problems and the local challenges they will be dealing with. If this escalates further, could this lead to a more major conflict in that area?
Given the language that the Chinese have used, I think there is a very grave danger indeed of a major escalation there. What what has baffled me over this year is that you have had very strong personalities as heads of state or prime ministers in both China and India who would have been strong enough to actually accept maybe a United Nations brokered peace that will allow for, you know, for an area that will not be occupied by forces of either countries, a demilitarized zone, but not only demilitarized, but that will have the presence of United Nations, either observer team or peacekeeping team. Although it's a very hostile area, that I will pity foreign troops who will be put there in order to monitor the demilitarization. But to me, that will be the way forward. But the arrogance of well, maybe yes, the arrogance of leaders of both countries, spurred on by the militancy of their people, is, I think, what has led to this burning issue since 1962, that had led to the first war was in 1962, and I think there have been several conflagrations since then. I don't want to blame anybody, since really, I don't have direct access to, cables and information, strategic information in that area. But I think that the Chinese probably would have been prepared, especially since they, given the nature of the system and their government, probably would have been more prepared to have a really demilitarized zone than Indian government would, because there's a volatility and nationality or nationalism on the part of Indian population when it comes to territory. I mean, look at what has been going on in Kashmir. Since the creation or the division between India and Pakistan. But the way forward to me would be a demilitarized zone, put in a UN observer team or a UN peacekeeping team that will separate both forces.
Prof, there are two questions here which I'm going to combine into one across different channels. And the thought here is China is trying to create some sort of diversion. One of the points here say that China released COVID-19 to rattle Trump. And another one says here that China is creating distractions so people don't actually know what they're up to and what they're doing to destabilize the elections that are taking place in the United States. Do you share any of those views?
No, I don't. Um, I'm always a bit wary of conspiracy theories. Uh, Number one, I don't believe that the Chinese created or manufactured, or whatever language you want to use, COVID-19, and then, released it to destabilize Trump. I don't believe that. Uh, and secondly, that they will now stoke up problems with India in order to create problems for Trump. It's, in a way, I would have liked to have a one-on-one with whoever sent in that question to ask him, what made you say this? What information do you have? What is your own interpretation or deconstruction of events there that's leading you to think China will do this? Yes, I've been quite critical of Chinese diplomacy, especially in the past 1 year. But the Chinese are not stupid. They are not.
Mm. While we're talking about COVID-19 here, it still continues to be a big issue in across the nations of the world, and not just the United States. But we have this development where, particularly in the United States, where some states are choosing to ignore the mandate coming out of the White House on the basis that they want to do what is right for their own states, and suggestions that Trump is actually trying to do the right things, but the states are choosing to do something different.
Please don't don't drag us into the internal COVID-19 politics in the United States. It's so confusing. There is no leadership from the top. There is no consensus of views from the top. I mean, Trump says one thing, his scientific advisors say another thing. They are now talking about, which is very funny. You know, 2 weeks ago or so, on this same program, we averted our mind to the Russians coming out with a vaccine without going through the third stage. It's now amazing that in the United States, 2 days ago, the CDC is now saying that it will authorize, no, correction, it may authorize the use of vaccine without waiting for that stage 3 to be completed. The Americans sounding like the Russians, which we all condemned, including the American scientists, rightly condemned what the Russians wanted to do. Now, an official agency in the United States is saying it may do that as well, all because of the election coming. So what is the difference between Putin wanting Russia to be the first to come up with a vaccine, and now, in order to help Trump in November elections, the CDC is saying it may approve a vaccine? The same thing, both of them. So really, I cannot get my head round what is happening within the United States as regards COVID-19 and how to handle it. All I will say is I feel sorry for the American people, because they are the ones, just as I said 2 weeks ago that I will feel sorry for the Russians, they are the ones who will pay the price if things go belly up, if these things go disastrously wrong. 180 something thousand people have died in the United States. I mean, yes, you may say, oh, well, but it's not up to 500,000 yet. But these are 180 something thousand husbands, wives, grandfathers, grandmothers, and children are starting to die. And yet, people are playing politics. I never thought I would see, given the emotions that Americans attach to families. I never thought I would ever see that the day will come when there will be an insensitive leader um, in the White House who seems to be insensitive to the price that the American people are paying for COVID-19. Unbelievable, shameful.
Thank you for that, Prof. And I think that is about what we have time for tonight. I think we've dealt with the questions that have come in. But to our viewers, thank you for joining us again this evening. I can see the numbers are up on YouTube as well. Thank you for all those who have joined this evening. Next week, we're going to be having a guest. And we're going to be dealing with the important topic of alternative routes into leadership in government, particularly for the younger generation who feel they just want to go to the top and for the top roles, and maybe neglecting the grassroots and working to build up from the grassroots. And joining us next week will be Her Excellency Ambassador Yvonne Kamati Yahaya. She will be with us next week to discuss this very important topic. Thank you all for joining tonight. We thank you for your time. Thank you, Prof, for being here again. And as usual, being ever so insightful on all these topics. We'll see you next week.